happy to have Ken Bleakley with us to talk with us today and to talk about his experience as while he was a student at SPA at the American University, and then also since he's left us. We're anxious to learn about your career path and how you went from a graduate of the MPA program at American University where you are today and your work in telemedicine.
Terrific. Well, Dean, it's very good talking to you this afternoon, and it's always a delight to have this good contact with the American University community. I appreciate. Yeah, my career path and my links to AU really started. I had been a Foreign Service officer for about 10 years, and my specialty really has been political relations, particularly national security. But by the late 1960s, early 1970s, it was becoming clear that computer technology was going to change everything in the world, particularly the whole field of diplomacy. And I realized that I had done an early experiment with a distance program done by IBM where we were doing some trade negotiations using it. That I really have to go to work on this. I did some research and found, lo and behold, here's American University has a graduate program in Master's Public Administration with a specialty in health or management technology. And so that was exactly what I wanted to do at that time.
Sure. What took you from the MPA program to where you are now? How did you use that program as you continued in your work as a Foreign Service officer, and then when you left the Foreign Service to start a new business?
At the time I was completing my work at AU, I was the Panama desk officer. And lo and behold, a couple of weeks before graduation, they decided they better send me right down to Panama to get involved in the negotiations for the Panama Canal, which didn't come to an end for about another 10 years. But at any rate, I took off for Panama and missed my graduation. In Panama, I began to work not only with the U.S. side of it, the civilian side, but also with the military and the governor of the canal zone. And we began to use some of my computer knowledge to put together a rudimentary analysis of the issues. It was really pretty basic back in those days. You still relied on your seat of the pants knowledge, but it did come in handy later on. After Panama, I went on to Bolivia, where I became administrative officer. My qualifications being that I had a master's degree in public administration and therefore could kind of jump ahead from where it would be to a more senior position because of the fact that I had it. So score one more for the AU program.
Excellent.
After Bolivia, things really got interesting. I came back and went to work at the Pentagon. And with what had been some pretty basic knowledge in computers that I acquired earlier, I began working with the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, DARPA. At the very time, they were developing the World Wide Web. And we took the earlier knowledge of how to conduct negotiations for a much more complex negotiation with the Philippines for our bases there at Clark and Subic bases. And with them, we developed, it's really interesting for your students who are also in economics, based on Pareto optimality of trying to come out with outcomes that came to less or more than a zero-sum game. We developed highly complex algorithms, and I can recall my wife dropping me off at our super secret site where I would pick up an 80-pound portable computer and go off to the Philippines for indeterminate amounts of time, put it in the back room, and when we came into a little bit of an impasse, go back and run my algorithms to see if perhaps there was a compromise solution that would benefit us both. That's kind of been the trajectory that took me right up to my last job in the State Department and a few others along the way, helping refugees internationally and so on. But I was the deputy coordinator of the senior civil servant guy handling our international telecommunications and information policy. Finished that career and was pretty happy with it. Out of that, decided though that there was a great future to be had for entrepreneurs in the field of telecommunications, information technology. To make a long story short, we went from there to looking specifically at health information technology, found that what we wanted to do was not really being done elsewhere in the world. So along with some physicians and philanthropists, we formed my company, PhoneMed. We've now been in business for 22 years. And as we speak, we're experiencing a better than 1,000 percentage point demand for our telehealth services. We provide advice by nurses over the telephone.
Great. Well, we all know what's driving that demand right now and how important that is. So thank you for having those services out there. And I know from conversation with you that oftentimes those services are going to college students on campuses and universities after their wellness centers close or their health centers close. So I appreciate that. You came back to AU, as you said, after you had some time in the Foreign Service. Can you talk about why at that point in your career you came back and why people might today want to come back, even if they've been working for a little while, to get a graduate degree?
Well, first of all, I've got to say, I believe these same programs are still in effect for people who do have full-time jobs and want to either just enrich their own experience or, in my case, go in for a specific field where they knew they needed to gain some more knowledge. The availability of the AU after-hours programs are absolutely terrific. I mean, I cannot talk about them too widely. And as I said, I thought I benefited from both sides of it. I both found it a broadening experience as well as giving me technical knowledge that I was lacking.
So, you started your business, PhoneMed, back in 1999. Not at the height of telemedicine by any means. It's been slow growing. What do you think, what advice would you give to students who are coming out now with graduate degrees and maybe not to the healthiest of job markets that we've seen, maybe possibly even the worst that we've seen in many years? What advice would you give them for, persisting and going forward and finding those jobs they want?
Well, I think first and foremost, you've got a tremendous opportunity just being in Washington, D.C., because however you feel on the political spectrum, one thing is clear. The U.S. government is going to be a driving force on the jobs market, on the economy for some time to go. So you can follow things pretty closely on that. So my advice to the students is this is what you're best at, is figuring out where the world is going, not where it's been. The world is going to be going in an entirely different direction, whether it's international or domestic. The service industry is going to become more prominent. Telecommuting is going to become more prominent, and certainly telehealth. You've heard the president and his closest advisors all talking about telehealth. After all of these years where we've been in the trenches and pioneering, as I said, we're finding 1,000+% increase in demand.
So you're in a little different situation than some of the folks that I'll be talking with, in the sense that your workforce is busier than ever right now, and some of us are trying to keep folks working from a distance and building that culture. What are some leadership tips that you might give from the perspective of someone whose business is booming right now and trying to make sure you don't have burnout or people just with fatigue from the work they're doing? How might you, as a leader, help with that?
That's a terrific question. I think it starts from being prepared from the word go. And fortunately, a couple of years ago, I turned over my responsibilities as CEO to an excellent registered nurse who came up through the ranks and has been a brilliant leader at every step of the way, who is really good at nurturing people and keeping that whole element up, which frankly is something that I am not good at. I'm too much of a driven guy. And I guess one of my things would be the caution for those of us who are achievement oriented and driven, always to remember to be kind to people. It's one of the things I learned working so closely with the military, is that they're very good at that. And certainly our CEO is been one of these people who's been able to do that. So I guess that's the main takeaway I would have, is no matter how good your technical knowledge and your other leadership skills become, don't forget that you've got to deal with and motivate people to keep them excited about what you're doing.
Well, I love ending on a note about how kindness is a big, important part of how we lead. So I thank you for taking the time this afternoon to speak with us, and I wish you all the best. I wish you good health, and thank you for being with us. And I'll see you in Florida maybe sometime soon. So take care,
I
Ken.
hope so. And Dean Wilkins, thank you, and thank American University for helping to make my life richer and better. So that's the message I would have for those who are thinking about attending your university.
Thank you. So kind.
Okay.